I spotted him across the candlelight, my husband, laughing softly as he poured wine for another woman. Not just any woman, the one whose name had appeared on his phone late at night, the one I had suspected but never dared to confront. He didn't see me, not yet, not from where I was sitting just 2 tables away. In the same dress he once said was too loud for a night out, same perfume he forgot he bought me last Valentine's Day. He leaned in closer to her, touched her wrist like it was instinct, and she smiled, like she belonged there, like I had never existed. But what he didn't know, what neither of them saw coming, was that I didn't show up alone. The man sitting across from me was her husband, and tonight was no accident. It was a reckoning, not with fists, not with screams, but with calm, calculated truth, delivered right between the appetizers and the wine. So when people ask me what betrayal looks like, I don't describe tears. I describe candlelight, a reserved table for 2, and the exact moment a liar forgets to look over his shoulder. Because some dinners aren't for romance, some are for revelation. And this was the night I stopped being his wife and became the woman who finally saw him for exactly who he was. Everyone thought we were the kind of couple people envied, the kind who sent out Christmas cards with perfect smiles, who hosted backyard barbecues in the summer, who looked like they had it all figured out. My name's Rachel Green. I'm 43, a senior lecturer in business management at Oregon State, and for almost 2 decades, I believed in the storybook. Daniel, my husband, was a rising star in one of Portland's top law firms. Smart, confident, charming in a way that made people lean in just to hear him talk. We met during grad school. He'd stayed late one night at the campus law library. I was rushing through case notes for my operations class. He offered me a half-cold coffee and a sarcastic compliment. I offered him my number. We got married 2 years later in a tiny ceremony on the coast. No big crowds, no extravagant vows. Just a lot of salt air, nervous laughter, and 2 people who promised they'd never lose each other in the chaos. For years, I thought we kept that promise. We bought a 2-story colonial outside Eugene wide porch, big windows perfect for the golden retriever Daniel always wanted. And we had 2 daughters, Ellie and Morgan, both in college, now both too smart to fall for the kind of love I once believed in. Every summer we took a road trip, Yellowstone, Zion, Big Sur. We always took pictures with the girls laughing in the back seat, Daniel's hand on the wheel, me pretending not to get carsick while reading travel guides aloud. We weren't flashy. We didn't need to be, because from the outside we were steady, and from the inside we were just busy. That's what I told myself. Every time Daniel came home late from work, every time he forgot our anniversary, every time his phone buzzed and he tilted it just slightly away. I was the kind of wife who gave space because I thought that was respect. And Daniel, he was the kind of husband who knew how to say, "I love you" without ever saying the words. At least that's what I told myself, year after year, until I stopped noticing that he'd stopped trying. The first real shift was small. He stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. Then came the excuses, early meetings, last-minute court filings, out-of-town client dinners that always ended just after midnight. I'd ask if he was okay. He'd nod, kiss my forehead, and say, "Just tired, babe. Long week." And I believed him, because that's what good wives do, right? They believe. But deep down, somewhere I never wanted to visit. I knew the man I married wasn't lost. He was hiding, and I was making it easy. So I kept cleaning up after him, kept showing up to school events alone, kept cooking dinner for two even when only one plate was touched, because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to admit that sometimes what looks stable is just a slow collapse, dressed in polite silence. And the truth is, you can't fix a marriage when you're the only one still in it. But back then, I still believed we just needed time. A weekend away, a shared bottle of wine, one honest conversation. I didn't know that what we really needed was already gone. Trust doesn't leave with a bang. It slips out quietly, one unanswered text, one forgotten kiss, one redirected gaze at a dinner party. And by the time you notice, you're already alone. But denial is a powerful drug. It keeps the ring on your finger, and the truth far enough away that you can fall asleep next to a stranger without questioning why you feel so cold. So that's what I did. I kept pretending, smiling through Sunday brunch, laughing at jokes I'd already heard 10 times, letting the ache in my chest feel like just stress. Until one rainy Thursday night, his phone pinged, and the mask slipped, just enough for the storm to finally begin. It was just a sound, a soft, familiar chime from a phone resting on the nightstand. Daniel was in the shower, the water running loud enough to drown out thoughts. But that ping, it cut through the noise like a needle to the spine. I wasn't snooping. I never had been. 17 years together, and I had never once checked his phone. Not when he worked late, not when he laughed a little too hard at a coworker's text, not even when he started locking his screen just a little too quickly. But that night, something in my gut stood up before I did. The screen lit up. One line of text, short, simple, but devastating. Table for two confirmed at Aurelia, 7:45 p.m. Friday. Window seat as requested. She'll love it. I stared at it, that innocent little message, sitting there like a loaded weapon. Aurelia. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was our dream spot. We used to walk by it on rainy nights, peering through the gold-lit windows. He always said, someday we'll do a big night there. When we have the time, when we've earned it. We had a reservation once, our 15th wedding anniversary, but he canceled, said a client needed him in Seattle. I had never set foot in that place, but now he was taking someone else a window seat. Wine prearranged, a reservation with thought, intention, romance. My hands moved before my brain could catch up. I picked up his phone, my fingerprint still unlocked it, and with that 17 years of trust crumbled under one thumbprint. The messages were all there, months and months of them. Her name was Jessica Moore, 28, works in PR at his firm, blonde, always smiling in her photos. The kind of smile that knows it's being admired. They messaged every morning talking about Coffee Flavors podcasts matching workout routines. They messaged every night sharing memes, inside jokes, Spotify playlists, pictures from work trips that never made it to his calendar. And then I saw it, a photo of them in Napa, arms around each other, wine glasses raised, her head tilted on his shoulder like she belonged there. His grin bright, carefree, unrecognizable. I didn't cry, not right away. What I felt was silence, the kind of silence that screams in your skull, the kind that floods your chest until it aches to breathe. I wanted to throw the phone, smash it into the wall, scream so loud the neighbors called someone. But instead I placed it gently back on the nightstand, face down, like nothing had happened. "Babe, have you seen my navy tie?" His voice casual from the steam-filled bathroom, like he wasn't planning an intimate evening for a woman who wasn't me. I swallowed the volcano rising in my throat. Second drawer. My voice didn't shake, It didn't rise, it didn't beg. It landed cold like glass on marble. That night I slept beside him, back turned, eyes wide open. Every breath he took felt like another nail into something I once called sacred. He slept peacefully. The man who had betrayed me didn't even stir. I watched the ceiling until sunrise, heart pounding like I had just run for my life. But it was my dignity that had been running, trying to escape the lie I'd been living in. By morning, I kissed him goodbye. Same routine, same good luck at work. But inside, I was already gone. And the only thing louder than the pounding in my chest was the thought forming in my mind. If he wanted a night to remember, I'd give him one. Just not the way he imagined. Lied. Thank you for the invitation, Ms. Green. That sounds wonderful. I'll see you Friday. I stared at his response, feeling a strange swirl of guilt and relief. He didn't know, but soon he would. Not from rage, not from revenge, but from truth cold calm and absolutely undeniable. That evening I made the call. Aurelia's hostess answered on the third ring. Good evening, how may I help you? I smiled softly, though she couldn't see it. I'd like to reserve a table for 2 this Friday night. Near the window if possible. She checked. We do have some availability, ma'am. Any special requests? Actually, if there's an option to be seated near the table, under the name Green or Moore, we're colleagues hoping to surprise them with a drop-in. Half-truths, strategically placed. She didn't question it. Yes, I can seat you nearby. Perfect. No wine requests, just a good view. I hung up, heart pounding not from fear, but from clarity. For the first time in months, I felt awake. I didn't know how Aaron would react. I didn't know how Jessica or Daniel would respond. But I knew this. If betrayal had a stage, I had just set the table. And I was done being the quiet woman in the background. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reality. Delivered where they least expected it, not in an argument, but over candlelight. Because if love had rules, so did dignity. And I was ready to stop protecting their lies with my silence. By the time Friday rolled around, I had rehearsed every second of that evening 100 times in my head. I wasn't planning to cry. I wasn't going to throw a drink or slap anyone across the face. This wasn't a soap opera. This was strategy, precision, a quiet kind of vengeance. The kind that didn't need yelling, because the silence would scream for itself. At 6:30 p.m., I zipped up my teal silk dress, the one Daniel once said was too loud for a serious dinner. That night, I wore it like armor, hair pinned in a soft bun. Subtle makeup, a touch of champagne lipstick bold enough to whisper confidence, but not so loud that it screamed for attention. My heels clicked on the hardwood as I walked out of the bedroom, passing framed photos of us smiling on family vacations, graduations, anniversaries. None of them looked real anymore. It wasn't sadness that filled my chest, it was something sharper, something cleaner. Resolve. I arrived at Aurelia 20 minutes early. The hostess recognized my name and led me to a table near the front window, a direct line of sight to where Daniel and Jessica would be seated. The table was perfectly positioned, close but not suspiciously so. I ordered a martini extra dry, something I hadn't had in years. Not since before motherhood made me cautious. Every part of me was alert, my breath steady, my spine straight, not tense prepared. Then I saw him, Aaron. He walked in exactly on time. Dark navy shirt, gray slacks neat but understated. His expression polite, curious, completely unaware of the storm he was stepping into. He scanned the room, spotted me, approached with a warm professional smile. Miss Green Rachel, please. We shook hands. "Thank you again for the invitation. This place is beautiful." "It is," I replied, matching his tone. "I thought it'd be a good setting for a meaningful conversation." We eased into small talk. He spoke passionately about his recent urban design projects. I nodded, asked thoughtful questions, kept the conversation flowing. But my eyes, they kept drifting toward the door. And then they walked in. Daniel, in the blazer I bought him last Christmas. Jessica, in a tight red dress that clung like a confession. They didn't see us, not yet. Daniel pulled out her chair with the same ease he once saved for me. He poured her wine with a flourish, his fingers brushing hers like it was second nature. They laughed, smiled like the world revolved around their little lie. I tightened my grip on my glass, but my face stayed calm, composed, unbothered. Aaron hadn't noticed yet. He was mid-sentence explaining the soil preservation methods used in his latest green project. And I was nodding, smiling, while watching my husband fall deeper into a fantasy that was about to detonate. Then it happened. Daniel glanced up and saw me. His face froze, the color drained. His hand jerked just enough to nearly tip the wine. A waiter caught it in time. Jessica followed his gaze. Her lips parted slightly. Recognition hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I turned back to Aaron, smiled gently, and said, "Excuse me for a moment." I stood up, walked calmly toward the restroom, but not before brushing right past their table. Jessica turned pale. "You're Rachel, right?" she whispered, eyes wide. I stopped, met her gaze. "And you're the one holding hands with my husband under the table, while your husband is sitting 10 steps away." She looked like she might faint. "Please, not here." "Why not?" I tilted my head slightly. "Isn't this the perfect place? Candlelight, wine, everything set for a perfect performance, right?" Daniel stepped forward. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" I looked at him, then called out loud enough for only one table to hear, "Aaron, can you come here for a second?" Aaron rose slowly, confused, concerned. He approached, his brow furrowed. "What's going on?" I didn't blink. I didn't waver. "Aaron, this is my husband, Daniel, and I believe you recognize Jessica, your wife." There it was, the explosion, without sound. Aaron's face dropped. Jessica staggered back, one hand over her mouth. Daniel looked like he wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. But I stood still, quiet, solid. Then I said calmly, "Oh, and don't worry about the bill, Daniel. Your company card seems quite familiar to her." And with that, I walked back to my table. No tears, no screams, just the sound of my heels and the truth cracking the illusion they built, in full view. And the best part, we were just getting started. I returned to the table and took my seat like nothing had happened. Aaron was still standing, his eyes locked on the scene we had just walked away. From his wife frozen beside my husband, both of them staring at the wreckage of the illusion they thought was safe. I motioned to the waiter. Would it be possible to move us to a private room? My tone was polite, but beneath it was steel. The waiter blinked, nodded. "Of course, ma'am. I'll prepare it immediately." He glanced at the pair still frozen across the room. He knew. Everyone did. Within 5 minutes, we were escorted to a secluded space, a long table set for 4 dimly lit, with soft amber glow glass walls separating us from the hushed murmurs of the main floor. I sat on one side. Aaron took the seat beside me. Jessica and Daniel across, like students caught cheating on the final exam. Except this time there were no excuses that could be whispered under breath. No second chances. No one spoke for a long while. The only sound was the faint music from the dining room and the clink of the waiter setting down water glasses. Then Daniel broke the silence. "Rachel, I don't even know where to start." I poured water into my glass slowly. "Start 3 days ago," I said, without looking up when the reservation confirmation popped up on your screen, and I happened to see it. That's when I knew. Jessica looked down. Daniel's jaw twitched. "You don't understand," he stammered. I raised my hand. "No, you don't get a monologue tonight." I read the messages. I saw the photos. The Santa Barbara trip you claimed was a deposition. Yeah, I saw the matching bathrobes and champagne. Don't waste breath telling me it meant nothing. You gave her your time, your words, your attention. You gave her everything I begged you to give me for years. Jessica's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I never meant to." I turned to Aaron. "That's your wife, and this is my husband. The least we deserve is the truth, spoken out loud, not whispered behind locked screens." Aaron sat still, hands folded, eyes sharp. "Jessica," he said, "was it just a fling? Or were you planning a new life with him while I was out buying dog food and fixing your damn patio lights?" Jessica burst into tears. "I don't know. I felt unappreciated. Daniel listened to me, made me feel seen. So did I." Aaron snapped. "I listened to every late-night rant. I redesigned your home office 3 times because you said you couldn't think in clutter. I believed in everything you said. Turns out, I should have just believed in your silence." Daniel turned to me, voice shaking. "Rachel, I know I broke your trust. I know I don't deserve anything right now." I cut him off. "You don't. And don't pretend this is the first time you realized that. The end didn't start tonight. It started the moment you looked at her the way you used to look at me." He went quiet. Jessica wept silently. I reached into my purse, pulled out a small silver keycard, placed it on the table. "I booked a suite at the Everett Hotel across the street. I'll be staying there tonight. You're welcome to go home, Daniel, if you still have the nerve. But come Monday morning, I'd like you gone. I don't care where you go. But I won't share my space with a stranger anymore." He looked stunned. "You're serious completely?" Jessica's shoulders shook. Aaron leaned back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Daniel reached out across the table. "Rachel, please, don't throw this away. We've been through so much. I'll go to counseling. I'll quit the firm if I have to. I'll do anything, just don't let this be the end." I looked him in the eye, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel pulled to forgive. I didn't feel weak or angry or shattered. I felt clear. "You think this is the end?" "No, Daniel. The end was when you chose her, again and again, while pretending to still love me. It wasn't just one mistake. It was a series of small betrayals you made room for, minute by minute, lie by lie. And now, I'm choosing me." He slumped in his seat. Jessica wiped her face with trembling hands. Aaron stood slowly. "I'll get the check," he said flatly. "Dinner's over." But before we left, before we walked away from the wreckage, I turned to them both one last time. "I don't hate either of you. I just refuse to protect you anymore. Not from the truth, not from yourselves, and certainly not from the consequences of your choices." And with that we walked out. No yelling, no dramatics. Just the sound of 4 chairs being pushed back, and the quiet closing of a door that would never be reopened. Because that night the truth didn't just appear. It sat down at the table, poured itself a drink, and refused to leave until everything false had crumbled. I thought I knew the full story, the betrayal, the deceit, the hidden messages and candlelit dinners. But the thing about betrayal is, it rarely travels alone. That night, after the confrontation, Aaron and I didn't part ways immediately. We walked in silence down the stone path outside Aurelia, the city buzzing around us, like nothing had changed while our lives had just shattered in real time. He stopped beneath a street lamp, turned to me and said something that made the air around us thicken. I think this wasn't the first time Jessica's done this. I blinked. What do you mean? He sighed, rubbed his jaw. A few years ago, she got really close with her old boss at her last job, a marketing VP in Seattle. He was married. They had late-night work calls, business trips that didn't add up. When I asked about it, she said I was being paranoid, gaslit me so hard I actually apologized. He looked at me dead in the eyes, but this time I knew something was off. She started dressing differently, checking her phone every 5 minutes, and always had a reason to stay late. My stomach turned. Daniel didn't just fall into something. He wasn't seduced by some accidental connection. He'd walked right into the arms of someone who'd done this before. It's not just the betrayal that hurts, Aaron said. It's the realization that we were never even the first ones being lied to. I stood there processing, trying to recalibrate the last 6 months, and realizing just how many signs I missed. The wine he suddenly had opinions about. The new cologne he wore only on Thursdays. The client retreat in Napa that didn't include any clients. This wasn't a romantic mistake. It was a pattern. And Jessica, she wasn't just a co-conspirator. She was calculated, deliberate. A woman who collected attention like currency and cashed it in at the cost of someone else's marriage. And Daniel, he let her. He welcomed it. He wrapped himself in the illusion of being understood as if that justified the destruction he left behind. I looked up at the city skyline lights flickering in high-rise windows. Some people winding down their days, others just beginning to live out their own quiet betrayals. And I realized something then. Something sharp. This wasn't about me not being enough. It was about him not being whole. Jessica didn't replace me because I lacked something. She filled a space Daniel created by neglect, a void he carved himself by retreating lie by lie into someone else's arms. I turned to Aaron, voice steady. They weren't just cheating on us, they were escaping themselves. He nodded slowly, and dragging us through their escape route. We didn't need to say more. The truth had stretched beyond broken vows. It had bled into patterns, manipulation, and deception so casual. It had become routine, and that was the most horrifying part. This wasn't a tragic love story. It was a blueprint of selfishness, signed and sealed behind smiles and silence. And I was done playing a character in someone else's delusion. By the following morning, I realized something that burned hotter than the betrayal itself. Daniel still believed this could stay quiet, that our marriage could dissolve in whispers, and he'd walk away with his reputation intact, as if the years I spent protecting him could be buried alongside my dignity. But I had protected him long enough, and silence had already cost me too much. I sat at my desk, opened my email, and typed messages to 3 people who had once adored him: his mother, his oldest friend Mark, and Jenna, our college roommate who still sent us Christmas cards with gold glitter. The subject line was simple: "There's something I need to tell you before you hear it from someone else." The body of the email wasn't spiteful, it wasn't bitter, it was honest. I told them the truth, that Daniel had been unfaithful for almost a year. That I found out, that I confronted it with grace, not violence, and that I was no longer willing to pretend for his sake. I didn't ask them to take sides. I didn't beg for validation, but I refused to let him hide behind the image I helped him build. And I wasn't finished. That afternoon, I made one final call to a colleague of his at the firm, someone I trusted, someone who once called me the smartest woman Daniel ever dated. I didn't gossip. I didn't leak screenshots. I just said, I think you should be aware of something that may affect your team. Less than 24 hours later, Jessica was quietly let go. The official word violation of interdepartmental conduct policy. No drama, no headlines. Just a clean break, the kind high-end firms prefer when secrets start costing money. Daniel was told to take a leave of absence for personal reasons. But I knew what that meant. The Whisper Network had already kicked in. The man who once walked through those doors with tailored suits and boardroom confidence was now just another scandal people murmured about during coffee runs. And the irony, he blamed me. He called the next day, voice tight, words clipped. You told people, no, I said. I just stopped lying for you. Rachel, you're ruining my reputation. No, Daniel, you did that when you decided to build your life on a lie. I'm just not sweeping the glass anymore. He hung up, didn't call again for days. But the messages started, the flowers at work, the long emails titled, please read this. 4 pages about clarity and change and how he panicked. But I didn't respond, because for once my silence wasn't surrender, it was armor. Proof that I no longer needed to perform emotional CPR on a man who killed the heartbeat of our marriage. He wanted forgiveness as a shortcut back into comfort. But forgiveness isn't a favor you give someone just so they can sleep at night. It's a choice you make so you can wake up without bitterness. And I wasn't ready for that yet. Not because I hated him, but because I had finally remembered how much I loved myself. This wasn't vengeance. It wasn't rage. It was honor. The quiet reclaiming of my name, my story, my worth, from the mouth of someone who thought charm would always shield him from consequence. And maybe, once upon a time, it did, but not anymore. Not now, not after everything. Because this time, the woman walking away wasn't afraid to be seen anymore. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't just vanish when the door slams shut. It lingers in quiet spaces, in morning routines, in the way you reach for a second coffee cup, then remember you no longer need to. I moved out 3 weeks after that night at Aurelia, into a modest 2-bedroom apartment closer to campus, nothing fancy, but flooded with light. I bought plants, a lot of them. I didn't know much about keeping them alive, but I figured we could learn together. I painted the walls a soft sage green, hung my own photos for the first time in years, not of family, not of us, just moments that made me feel present. I started waking up early again, not because Daniel's alarm went off, but because I actually wanted to. I walked to the bakery down the street, ordered almond croissants, and smiled when the barista remembered my name. I took a weekend photography class, learned how to see shadows in a different way, not as something dark, but something that gave depth to light. And slowly, I began to breathe again. Erin and I kept in touch, not in a romantic way, not yet, but something deeper. A quiet companionship built on mutual understanding and shared wreckage. We texted in the mornings, shared book recommendations. He sent photos of hikes he took with his dog. I sent pictures of the basil plant on my kitchen windowsill still alive, I'd write. Every few weekends we met for coffee, sat at the same booth in the corner of a local cafe. No pressure, no expectations, just peace. He told me about the divorce paperwork he filed, how Jessica had moved out, left a note, and didn't fight him on much. I told him about how Daniel tried one last time a handwritten letter, 7 pages, all the things he never said when he should have. I didn't even finish reading it. because by then I didn't need answers. I had outgrown the questions. What surprised me most wasn't how I had survived, but how I had started to thrive. I began lecturing with more passion. My students noticed. One told me, "You talk like someone who's actually lived what she teaches." I smiled, because maybe I had. Aaron showed up at one of my public talks, sat in the back row, took notes. Afterward, he waited quietly while I packed up. "You speak like someone who's found her way home," he said. "I think I have," I replied softly. There was no dramatic spark between us, no rush, no movie scene kiss in the rain. Just two people walking side by side through the aftermath of broken vows, and realizing that healing doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in laughter over shared pastries, in walking your own dog without checking your phone, in knowing someone sees you not as a role, but as a person who rebuilt herself brick by brick. And maybe, just maybe, in time, it could become something more, but even if it didn't, I was already whole. Not because someone else put me back together, but because I chose not to stay shattered. This wasn't a comeback. It was a reintroduction to myself, to joy, to freedom that didn't ask for permission. I was no longer Rachel the wife. I was Rachel, just Rachel. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. Almost a year had passed since that night at Aurelia, the night when truth pulled off its mask, and silence finally said everything. Spring came early that year. The cherry blossoms outside my building bloomed like they had something to prove. And for the first time, I didn't flinch at the sight of couples walking hand in hand beneath them. I had stopped measuring my days by absence, stopped keeping track of how long it had been since Daniel left, or how many mornings I woke up without wondering what he was doing. Instead, I counted blooms, new recipes I'd tried, books I had finished, little things that made me feel fully here. That April, I received an invitation in the mail Professor Linda Cole's retirement gala. She was one of my earliest mentors. The woman who taught me that strength didn't always have to sound loud. She was retiring after 40 years of shaping minds and saving reputations. The event was being held at the Easton Grand, a quiet, elegant ballroom with soft jazz and a view of the city skyline. I wore a navy sheath dress, simple, classic, my mother's pearl earrings. Nothing flashy, just something that reminded me I had roots and that I'd grown. The moment I walked into the ballroom, I scanned the crowd, colleagues, former students, and then I saw him, Daniel, standing near the back. Alone, thinner, hair grayer at the temples, still polished but missing that arrogant ease he once wore like a second skin. When he noticed me, he paused, set down his drink, walked over slowly. "Rachel," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. "I didn't expect to see you here. Linda was always kind to me. I wanted to say goodbye properly." He nodded, eyes drifting to the floor. "She's the last one who still talks to me," he said quietly. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the man I left, but he also wasn't the man I once loved. "I owe you an apology," he said, "a real one. Not because I think you need it, but because I need to say it. After everything, I lost more than I expected, and not just you. I lost who I thought I was. I didn't speak, didn't soften, just listened." He continued, "I tried to hold on to Jessica for a while after, but it unraveled quickly. It wasn't real, it never was." I nodded gently. "I hope you find peace, Daniel, really." He looked up, and for the first time there was no bargaining in his eyes, just acceptance. And then a warm voice came from behind me. "You made it." I turned. Aaron, wearing a charcoal gray jacket, relaxed, steady, with a soft smile that said everything without a single word. Daniel followed my gaze and understood. He nodded. "He's a good man. He is." I replied, my hand instinctively brushing Aaron's as he stepped beside me. Daniel stepped back. "You deserve a fresh start." "So do you," I said quietly. "When you're ready not to protect your image, but to stop hurting people who believe in you." He gave a slow nod, then disappeared back into the crowd. Aaron and I found seats near the edge of the dance floor, talked with old friends, took a photo with Professor Cole, and at the end of the night, under warm golden lights, we shared a slow dance. No music swells, no big declarations, just the quiet presence of two people who had once been shattered, but chose not to stay broken. As we walked to the parking garage, Aaron gently took my hand, and in that simple act, not rushed, not dramatic, I felt something I hadn't in years. Trust, not in him, not yet in love, but in myself, in the journey that brought me back to this moment, not as someone's wife or someone's betrayal, but simply as me. People often think betrayal is the worst part, that the knife in the back is what does the most damage, but the truth is it's not the betrayal itself. It's everything that comes after, the silence, the self-doubt, the endless question. How did I not see it? But what I've learned, what I've lived is this. You don't see it until you're ready to stop lying to yourself. Sometimes we call it love, when it's really just habit. Sometimes we call it loyalty, when it's really fear of starting over. And sometimes we stay, not because we're strong, but because we've forgotten we have permission to walk away. So if you're listening right now, if you're in a relationship that chips away at your spirit a little more each day, hear me. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to change the story. And no, you don't need anyone's approval to reclaim your peace. Forgiveness. It's not weakness, but it's not obligation either. You can forgive and still walk away. You can wish someone healing and still choose never to see them again. Because healing isn't about holding hands at the end. It's about knowing where the line is, the one between compassion for others and respect for yourself, and love, real love. It's not supposed to confuse you. It's not supposed to make you feel small or constantly prove your worth. Real love sees you in your mess and still chooses to stand beside you, not out of pity, but out of presence. It speaks through actions, not promises, through consistency, not grand apologies. And one of the hardest truths I had to learn was this. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go, not for revenge, not to make a point, but because peace tastes better than any apology wrapped in flowers and empty words. If you're rebuilding brick by shaky brick, know that you're not alone. The world doesn't reward silence with medals, but your soul does. When you choose clarity over chaos, self-worth over performance, truth over illusion. So wherever you are, whether you're healing, hurting, or just beginning to wonder if you deserve more, you do. You always have. And no matter who walks out of your life, if you still have yourself, you have more than enough to start again. That's not weakness. That's power. That's peace. That's coming home. To the one person who will never leave you behind, you.